Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club for the month of September. I am really excited about this month's book. It's a really wonderful piece of science fiction. It's thoughtful, it's smart, it's entertaining, and I am really glad to present to you Lost on Planet Earth. It's by Magdalene. We just did this just before the show. Visaggio and Claudia Aguirre, and they're both here. There they are. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. Visaggio. Okay. Yeah.
Visaggio.
I'm just gonna call you Max,
you're going
though,
like,
all right?
imagine you're Ray Romano. Ah!
Yeah. All right. Very good. The worst part is I grew up in Brooklyn, so I should be able to do that. I've become a Californian over the years, you know. And
excuse.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to the show, and let's talk about the book. Actually, let's start with the first question. It's always my first question. I think it's the best question. Of all the things you could be doing in your life, why comics? What is it about comics that thrills you, that excites you, that fills your heart with song, that is the thing that is you want to do?
It feels like the native format of my mind. I've been reading comics since I was, 6 or 7 years old. I started making comics when I was 8. My whole life I've been, writing comics in my head, whether or not they ever got made. There's something just very unique about it as a medium that has always really drawn me in.
Yeah.
There's this the way that time it becomes a function of space, kind of doesn't happen anywhere else, and you can really do very interesting things with that.
Yeah, no, very much. I would agree with that so much. Claudia, how about you? Why comics for you?
Well, I think comics is like something that was extremely accessible for me as a child and as a kid who really liked cartoons. So the most natural way in which I could tell my own stories was via comics, and it's something I never stopped doing. So now I do it for a living, and it's quite fun, honestly. I didn't think I could do that as a professional, but here we are.
Oh, that's interesting. So you didn't think you could do it professionally. That surprises me, considering how good you are at it.
Well, I am now, but honestly, as you may know, I am Mexican. So we grew up in the 90s thinking that the comics or any other kind of media was only made in the United States. So I was like, of course I can't do that. And then the internet happened, and you can do absolutely everything on the internet. So I just went for it, and it happened somehow.
Yeah. Now, my understanding is there's still some sort of a Mexican comics market, though, right? I mean, there's still some comics being published, aren't there?
Of course. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. I just when you're a kid and you're consuming these kind of products and you don't see the people doing it, you just assume everyone is like American.
Sure. Yeah, I know that I've seen some Mexican comics in bodegas in the Mission, for example.
Yes.
And it's funny, they look more like old American comics used to, kind of on newsprint with kind of much bolder covers and stuff than we get in America in a lot of cases.
Sorry, no,
please.
Okay, I was going to say comics in Mexico is a completely different experience. It's always been more zine oriented. I think until fairly recently, we had a very small scene, and then my generation and other people younger than me started like putting so much of themselves into comics that it became like a way bigger scene than it had ever been. So I think it's they are bolder, they are super different, and they're completely different markets too. Like I from what I've seen, like Mexican comics tend to be like super autobiographic and slice of life, and people really like that. I really like that too. a little bit of magical realism, stuff like that. Really,
Sure.
really cool.
Sure. Mags, what comics were you reading when you were a kid? You said you were 5 that you remember.
Probably 6 or 7.
Okay.
My first comics were some, issues of Action Comics that my dad picked up from a truck stop. Back when you could find comics in truck stops. And but I mean, I pretty quickly fell into Spider-Man and X-Men. That was what my peers were reading. That was the cartoons that were, coming out. I mean, so yeah, I've always been always been a webhead my whole life. But like when I was in elementary school, I got my first exposure to alternative comics actually through Mouse, and a copy that I stole from a friend who had checked it out from the library. So I've been feeling guilty about that for 28 years.
Right. They probably had a fine on them at some point there too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, what happened is he lent it to me, and then we let out for summer vacation, and I didn't see him, and he ended up not going to the same middle school as me, so I just never saw him again.
Right.
But that was like incredibly eye-opening. I sort of had no idea that there really were comics like that. And that
how old were you again when you encountered that?
Would have been end of 5th grade, so I would have been 11.
Wow. That's a really young age to encounter something as heavy as Mouse.
Yeah, it was. But people knew that I liked comics, and people knew that I liked history, and they were like, "Here, read this."
Yeah.
And it just absolutely blew me away. Changed how I thought about comics, and what the potential of the medium was.
Yeah. I can see that too, because he is, to get back to what you were saying before, he plays a lot with time and space there. If only, even if it's in a very sort of base way of going back between the past and the future.
Well, so one of the things that I actually find so fascinating about that book is in the first volume, that aside where we have an author, an Art Spiegelman, who's just getting younger and younger and younger, and he's wearing a mouse mask, and everyone in his world is wearing mouse masks. And there's this weird level of interaction with the level of reality in the world and the conventions of it being a comic. There's a degree of interaction with, if I remember correctly, with the elements of the medium itself. And that shit just blew me away. I was so confused. I didn't understand on what level this was supposed to be happening. But it kind of like got me thinking for the first time about the idea that none of this is happening. It's all just a presentation on a page. Yeah. And when I was in middle school, I started doing this, what was for me a very, very fascinating, sort of experimental comic. It was just about like this group of aliens stranded on Earth who could interact with like narrative captions and panel borders, and got into arguments with the narrator. And I showed it to my friends, and they were all like blown away by it. And I now know that that's not, some like huge insight, but that's like, it's sort of a big, sort of a fundamental kind of interaction that comics can have with the reader. Yeah. Breaking down all those boundaries. And it just kind of forever changed. I know I've already said that, but it did change how I think about comics, and that it's not just the presentation of a story, or the depiction of a world, but it's a medium with conventions that can be broken and screwed with to communicate to the reader in different ways.
Yeah. I'll really echo you on how Spiegelman used the masks in front of their faces to really say something about identity that, like, I think it probably took me 10 years to decode what I was looking at, but yeah, it's a really powerful use of it. And, again, we're talking about what, 1985? something like that. I mean, that was a long time ago, you know. Claudia, what works stuck with you? What early things that were formative to you?
Well, I think the very first thing that stuck with me was basically cartoons, like specifically Littlefoot and every single Dumbblood thing. Like storytelling wise, that is what struck me like really, really intensely, because these are cartoons, but they are extremely, in a way, violent, unpredictable, and cruel. And I was a kid and I was watching it and I was like, whoa, I mean, I can understand the feelings on this, and I want to evoke the same feelings and the same hopelessness and pain and all the things these characters are feeling, right? So storytelling wise, that was the first thing that struck me as how I can express these things in a visual medium. And when I was not tween, let's call it a tween, I was like 12 years old. I started getting into manga, and that totally blew my mind, completely, totally changed my world, because I was used to seeing American comics, and I liked them all right. I wasn't very into superheroes back then, and I wanted more. I wanted different stories, and something like that could speak to that really dramatic person who was really into these intense feelings. And what I found in manga was exactly that. It was it was either like extremely funny or super super cathartic. It spoke to me in a way that other comics couldn't speak to me. And I think uh, the funniest one I read is Ranma, and it's like absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious. And that was my favorite when I was like 15 or something like that. And then the one who totally blew my mind was Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant, and it just like everything made sense when I read that. It was completely, it just fucked me over. It was like a truck. Like, I understand this and I feel it, and this is uh, I am a different person because I read this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What are the first comics you remember making? Either of you can take that.
I can't hear you.
Oh, yep.
I had my mic muted.
Uh,
But first comics I made. I made this comic when I was 8 years old. I did two, I think they ended up being like 20-page comics, starring the exciting and original character of Spider Boy. He was in middle school. And it was just a Spider-Man knockoff. And because it was the 90s and that this was the world that I had grown up in, it wasn't enough for me to do Spider-Boy number 1 and 2. No. I had to do 2 issue number 1s for different Spider-Boy books. And it was a crossover.
Beautiful.
That's
wonderful.
funny.
Yeah.
Visionary.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And they never actually connected. It was just implied that they were going to in the future, and they never happened because I never did it again because I was pretty content to rest on my laurels.
Yeah, I like that. And Claudia, how about you? What do you remember about the early comics you were making?
Oh my God, it was fan characters from The Lion King. I don't want to remember that. Let's move on.
With someone writing little Lion King /fic.
I like that though. I like that. That's great.
That was something. That was something.
So both of you started doing your own self-publishing thing before getting together, is according to my research. My research is looking at the internet. So tell me where I get any of this wrong. So Mags, you self-published a comic in 2006 that was called Sanctuary. Is that right?
Half right.
Okay.
So we didn't do a full self-pub. what ended up happening was there's this. This was when I was at VCU in Richmond. There was a local like comics business guy named Brett Carreras, owner of Brett's Comics Pile, which is a big like online retailer of a lot of back issue stuff, and promotes a lot of like small comic shows in Central Virginia. He decided he wanted to try publishing, and he picked us up and another book, and he paid just crap loads of money to try to get some attention on it. It didn't work. We got in previews. We got a half-page ad in previews, and nobody ordered it, which is good because it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible book. I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever.
Did you approach him or did
he approached us? He approached us. We did a, where did he meet us? Yeah, we independently on our own signed up to do one of his shows, like to table at one of his shows, and he was just like really like taken with, I guess, our enthusiasm. Enough to put his money where his mouth ought not to have been, because again, horrible book. The first issue is just one half of a 60-page fight scene.
Wow.
Wow. I had no idea what I was doing. There's no story. And I was like, this is the best comic ever made.
How old were you?
It probably was, though.
We were putting this together starting in 2005. It would have been 2021.
Okay.
Came out in 2006.
Yeah.
We ended up relaunching it as Stronghold a few years later. I wrote the first, I want to say 6 issues of that before I stopped having the availability for it. And it's way better. I still think it's incredibly rough material. But I mean, I was still figuring a lot of things out. But that book was actually where Heather Antos got her first editing job before she went on to Marvel. And we've been working together in Lump Armor and other ever since.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
She taught me a lot about the craft of comic storytelling.
Nice. Claudia, you started a imprint with Eva Cabrera, it says here. And I can't even read my own handwriting, so it's what is, I don't even know what the word
Boudica.
I wrote down is.
It's Boudica Comics. Yes. There you go.
That's what happens when I write my notes by hand. So tell me about this. How you guys came together, what you were doing.
Well, we were besties for a while, and then we were like, we really want to do comics. How do we do this? And we really hadn't gone outside of our little bubble, so we weren't sure how to start doing it. So we started self-publishing some little comics and ideas, and tried to collaborate in stories that we could like put together in a single volume, and just do that so we wouldn't spend a lot of money self-printing all of those. And we took those to conventions, different places, and used them as portfolios, and like slowly we started like building better work and better stories. And we still publish once in a while, but we're like super busy with other stuff right now. But we have a ton of different stories that we published a few years before we started. We actually started like our actual careers with Max and Kim and Kim.
Yeah. And I assumed that was sort of how this came together. But let me just sort of wrap up this part. When you were going to shows, was it all in Mexico, or were you coming into California shows as well?
We did. Yeah. We went to different comic conventions. We hit San Francisco's APE, Alternative Press Expo, with our first book. Yep. We went to Comic-Con. We showed our stuff around. Like the closest we could go was California, so
Yeah.
we tried to go to as many shows as possible and show our work and stuff like that. So we built a little bit of a presence there. Like we were there, people knew we were gonna be there like the next year and stuff like that. So we continued and we met a lot of people.
I really miss Ape. That was a show that was a really special show. And,
Yes, it was.
I'm super sad that's not there anymore. So you guys worked together first on Kim and Kim.
Yes.
Tell me how that came around.
So I had been developing Kim and Kim for a few months. I had written a billion drafts of that first issue, trying to figure out what exactly this weird book that I had in my head was supposed to be. Some more serious, some more goofy, some more brutal, some more PG. Once I finally landed on it, I started on the advice of and encouragement of my BFF Katie Rex, who was editor. I went and just started approaching artists who I really liked. And I reached out to Tess Fowler, whose work I was just in love with from Rat Queens, which was a book that I was drawing a lot of energy from, I guess. Not like a mumbo jumbo kind of like I'm drawing like energy from it sense, but just, it was a big influence in sort of the spirit of how I wanted to write. And
it would have been a better story if you were like burning them on an altar. I just have to say,
But so I reached out to Tess, and she was like, "I really love this script. I am booked up." We all know how that went, unfortunately. And she's, was like, who you should talk to are my, friends Ava and Claudia, and the rest is history. We hit it off, and it has just been this wonderful creative partnership that's gone on for 6 years now.
Yeah. So let me hear that same story from your side, Claudia.
Well, it's fun because Tess was one of the persons I got to meet because we were like going to conventions and stuff like that. And this one convention, her husband Chris was in front of our table, and he was like, "You know what? My wife loves you." And I was like, right, because I didn't know Chris in that moment. And Chris was like, "Yeah, let me bring you my wife," and then he brought Tess, and I was like, "Oh, this is your wife? Of course, sure, that's it." And then everything made sense. We were already friends, but like we got closer after that particular Comic-Con, and she wanted us to succeed because she's like that. She's like, "I love my friends. They're going to succeed because I love everyone, and everyone deserves like to tell their stories."
She loves being a big sister.
She's like
that's
that.
her favorite thing in the world.
Yes, and she was big sister in us at that moment.
She still does.
Yes, and
for the rest
it's
of
amazing.
my life, I think.
Oh, I love her so much. And then one day we got an email that said like, "Hey, I got a friend and she's looking for artists and a colorist." I don't know the exact wording, I forgot, but she told us Max was looking for an artist, and Eva and I didn't really have anything going on at that moment, and we were like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I like the script, and I remember Max sent like some character designs and a little pitch document, and it was really cool. And we were like, yeah, this shit is really, really good. And it vibed with Eva particularly because she likes that specific spice on her science fiction. and it was bonkers. Like, it was meant to be.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Just inspired. Just an inspired, incredibly serendipitous meeting that I think gave birth to a really special book.
Yeah, no, very much so. So you have a pitch, and you're making the pitch, and you're you've talked it out. You've started doing it. At what point are you bringing in a publisher? What point does Black Mask come in here?
So I initially hired Ava and Claudia to just draw, what was it, the first 8 pages? I think. And because I just wanted an ash can. And we just took it to NYCC 2015 and showed it around.
Okay. And you were paying out of your own pocket for this?
Katie ended up covering that for me.
Okay.
Which is a story in itself. Yeah, and we were talking to Boom about it for a hot minute, and and fun fact, Boom actually got back to us about passing on the book after it was already announced at Black Mask.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
But yeah, so I sent it to Black Mask when they opened up submissions, and got to be part of that wonderful class of 2016 that produced so much talent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they went to open submissions pretty fast, as I recall. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Kim and Kim was in their first wave of books, right?
No, we were in their second wave.
Okay.
We were we were a part of the class of 2016. That was like a whole marketing line.
Yeah.
And so it'd be like me, Teeny Howard, I think Vita was in there. I think Steve Orlando was in there. We were like the cool kids table for a hot second there.
Yeah. And Kim and Kim really worked. I mean, you got nominated for an Eisner. You got nominated for a GLAAD Award. That must have been satisfying for
the Eisner was really interesting because I was up against The Vision.
Yes.
And I was like, all right, cool, yeah, thanks for the nod. I'm not gonna win. Nobody was gonna beat The Vision that year. And then the next time I got nominated, I was up against Mr. Miracle.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything.
It's like, well, I'm not gonna win. I guess I'll show up and look pretty.
We were pretty that day, though.
Oh yeah,
it was really fun.
Queens of Space and Time.
We had fun.
I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it is really the honor is to get the nomination.
No, it is. It is.
Yes.
And I got a free trip to San Diego out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And at that point in your career, that must have been a big boost, right? For your just sort of emotionally and mentally, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Went to my head a little bit. It's important to stay humble in comics.
Right.
I think it was very helpful and very validating to just be like, oh, okay, so I'm not like a complete like piece of monkey shit. Like, oh, this dumb, stupid, what I like to call it trash gumbo, because I was just the whole book was an exercise, like deliberately an exercise in me just making my default response to any dumb idea I had, yes. Instead of like being really rigorous about it, because I have a tendency to sort of get like really lost in world building and world building logic. And so this was a book that like would just kind of been just this big mishmash of everything I loved, and just knowing that like, worked and people responded to that was genuinely surprising.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sounds like a really healthy way to work too, to be able to say yes to yourself. I mean, it's it makes me think of, sort of the improv rule, right? Like that's
where I got the idea, which I hate to admit because it's improv, but no, but like, I mean, this was just something that I ran into over and over and over again, prior to Kim and Kim, where I would just like start getting bogged down in like, well, why would this even be possible in this world? And instead of just being like, who cares? It doesn't matter. None of this is real. It doesn't have to fit together seamlessly. It just has to work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Kim and Kim was a deliberate exercise in that.
Yeah.
Of just saying yes. And that's how you ended up with bass guitars and shape-shifting octopuses and a space van and
Yeah.
Necromancy
No, I
bombs.
think it
and
did work, and
necromancy.
I think it did work, and I think the audience really responded to it. You know, I mean, certainly at least here in this store, we had a lot of people who were like, "This is great. This is exactly the comic I've been waiting for, and I hadn't even known it." Let me ask you a question about after you get nominated for an Eisner for, let's call it your first major work. I mean, I don't know if you both feel exactly the same way, but I would mostly consider it your first major work. Does that change either the way that you approach your next work, or what your expectations for the audience response for that work is?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it kind of went to my head, and I feel like I was just like kind of like an annoying shit for a while. Something I've been trying to be increasingly aware of over the last few years. Because how could it not? How could it not?
Yeah.
That was such like a ridiculous turn of events. And I think it spoiled me.
Mm.
Made me think I was, a little bit of a bigger shit than I was.
Right.
And in the years since Kim and Kim, like I've had to confront a lot of, not always, super fun truths about the kind of writer that I am, and the environments where I thrive. I don't really ever seem to click with big two work. There's been a lot, of stuff that was, being discussed that and it just stuff just ends up not, being the best fit. I kind of always want to do stuff that's a little bit weirder, and I feel like I kind of push a little back, probably a little too hard with editors. Because my logic is like, well, you hired me, so why wouldn't you want to, know what my ideas are?
Sure.
Instead of just like doing the what I would think of as like the safe route.
Yeah.
I always wanna knock shit over and break it, and see what weird shapes I can corral it into.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the greatest relationship for something like the big two. So I've just kind of had to like lean into and just kind of, I guess, grow into the weird sort of aggressive non-commerciality of a lot of what I want to do, and just be like, okay, well, it doesn't matter what the audience response is. What matters is I put this together, and this is my genuine work.
Yeah. No, I agree with pretty much everything you said right there. Claudia,
wow,
for
you thought I was a shit too? God. Oh my God.
No, I want to ask you, Claudia, though. So how was it for you to receive the Eisner nom on this first project?
I was really excited. I actually, oh my God. Okay, here's the story. So I have really bad knee issues. My whole lower body is completely out of whack, and I need a bunch of different operations to fix it, but I'm not going to do any more than I need to. So I had done my first surgery a month before on the knee, and it was absolutely fucking horrible because I'm allergic to painkillers.
So bad.
I'm allergic to painkillers. So
Wow.
I had to endure all that for a month. And then I received the nomination, and I was like, I have to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go. And I did a lot of physical therapy and stuff. And I went, and I'm sure you remember I had the crutches that day because I couldn't really walk, but I still got it. I still got there. I was so excited to be there. Like, you have no idea. I'm not sure if I'm like the only lesbian woman in Mexico who's been nominated for a comic award that way. I'm sure there's people who won a bunch, but I'm not sure if there's any woman who's been nominated. So it was a big deal for me. And I don't know, when I came back, I was like, well, I'm really sad I didn't win, but that's fine. And
Yeah, it was sad.
I just went on with my life. Like, I couldn't really let it get into my head because I have anxiety, so I'm always aware of of every single thing that I will do wrong. So it's really hard for me to go get over myself. So it's just anxiety and depression keeps you humble somehow. And I don't know, I just continue with my life. I'm just really excited that I got to have that nomination, and it was a really fun adventure to go.
Yeah.
And to the Eisners and getting the buffet and everything. It was so fun. But
Yeah, that cold turkey.
I don't know. Eva went to the buffet. I was just like, I am absolutely thoroughly disgusted. But
Yeah,
thank you.
It was
Something. It was something.
I wasn't feeling it.
Did you feel, Claudia, that this led to more opportunities in the short term because of the Eisner?
I don't know. There's like, they could, but I didn't really know. So I was just like, well, let's see what happens. Whatever happens is good because I'm still gonna work with Max. We're still friends. We're still gonna do really cool shit. So I wasn't really concerned. I think the opportunities came way later than that, and that's only because I worked really hard to get where I am.
Sure, that's fair. So I'm not exactly clear on the timeline of, did the next Kim and Kim come next? Did Firebrand come next? Which
it was the same at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah, there was a chunk of time when I was knocking shit out left and I think both of us were just knocking shit out left and right.
I had like 3 projects at the same time. I don't know how I did that.
Just to have that that so much energy those first couple of years.
Yes.
Yes. I have way less energy now. I used to seriously, I used to put out, I would write something like 40, 45 scripts a year.
That is fucking insane.
I was knocking out a script pretty much every week with, some very small exceptions around holidays and a burnout break that seemed to happen every summer. But I mean, so yeah, we did Kim and Kim. The next thing that I had was Quantum Teens Are Go with Eric Donovan, which remains probably the book that is just the closest to my heart. It's these messed up kids who just need someone to listen to them. And I fell in love with those kids, and I absolutely just cried so much when I finished writing that.
It's one of my favorite projects too. It's I don't know. I got to experiment a ton with color on that one, and Eric's lines just beautiful. I love that. It's one of my favorites so far.
Yeah, that was such a powerful just experience working on it, and it's a book that flew under the radar compared to Kim and Kim, which I've always been really sad about.
Me too.
But the people who love it, love it. The people who love it the way I love it.
And so let me just stick with Claudia just for a minute about Firebrand, because that was a webtoon comic.
Yes, it was an experience.
Yeah. I'd love to hear about it a little, because this. I mean, today webtoon is much more of an established thing. Then it feels like it was still pretty nascent at that moment.
Yeah, it was a little bit not as popular as it is right now. But I was actually the project was from Legendary Comix, which is a completely different company, and they just wanted me to. At first, we weren't supposed to do a webtoon. It was meant to be a comic book.
I see. Okay.
And then they had to fix all the things to do a webtoon. And then the second season, if you want to call it like that, second season, I was aware that this was a webtoon and I could like do whatever to make it look cute. But it was like it was really fast paced. Working with webtoons is like a sprint because you're like producing everything. I learned that you need a whole team to do a webtoon. Like you can't do that by yourself. It's really quick. And this story, it was really fun working on it because Erika Lewis is like super into fantasy and this modern day fantasy young adult thing, and it's kind of the deal I've been falling into the past years for some reason. It's a very exciting genre. But it was like extremely fast. I don't know how I survived that.
I'm fascinated that it evolved the way that it did, that it was Legendary hired you to do a regular comic first.
Yes.
And then they turned it into a web, because when I looked at the pages from the final version, let's call it, I was like, well, wait a minute. It looks like you chopped, like, or you redrew things, or you were adding stuff, but it's actually the other way around.
It's the other way around.
Full-time thing, and they trimmed it and chopped it and cut it down.
Yes, because I wasn't aware that it was going to be a webtoon until like two comics in, and I couldn't change. By the moment they told me, I couldn't backtrack. Right. And it was really weird. Like they were trying to figure out where to put this comic, and they ended up getting picked by webtoon. And if we were picked up by webtoon from the beginning, I would have done a bunch of things completely differently. But it was a learning experience, I think, because by the second season, I was like completely fresh, and I knew what to do and how to do it.
Because the framing and the pacing of doing
it's completely
work, right,
different.
Completely different.
Yeah,
vertical scroll versus the layout of the page.
Yes.
Are two totally different mindsets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this why there's not a book of the second season?
No, there should be a book of the second season. I don't know why they haven't taken it out, because the files I gave them, they're like huge panels. Like if they want to resize everything, they have basically they're all squares. Like you can resize everything whatever size you want. I don't know what's going on because I'm not like in the loop. So I don't know when they're supposed to deliver that comic.
Sure. So let me just stay with this just for one more minute, if you don't mind, Mags. I don't mean to put you on the background here. I'm just fascinated by this. The pacing, right, on a page versus an endless scroll is so different. Once you knew that you were doing webtoons as sort of the primary way that it was going to come out, or the initial way, did that change the way you wanted to tell the story?
Oh,
or
yes.
That you were able to tell the story?
Well, the way I wanted to tell the story was completely different now that I knew how I wanted to tell them and the way I could experience it, like an endless scroll. I got the scripts, and it had like they weren't really panels. They were like, this is what happens, and you can do it any way you want. So I got this, and I was like, okay, there's this description, and I can put 3 panels in, and they gave me enough freedom to do whatever. And then by the end, they cut some, they left some, and we tried to get this conversation going that what we wanted to show in the scroll. So in the end, it was like it was really fun to work in it, because we had that going. Like, this is what I want in the page. This is exactly what I want people to see. And they were like, okay, this works, but you can put this in here, or you can take it out completely. Just making it flow easily.
Interesting. That's because I think this is going to be one of the big challenges in the next decade, is people having to format their work for completely different presentation styles. You know,
It's not that difficult if you just do a bunch of big squares.
right? But okay, so but I guess my question is big squares. Does that always tell stories in the best way that you want to tell them?
Yes,
Right?
because I'm going to crop it anyway. So what the story I want to tell, I'm drawing it in a way that is like not any medium specific. It's just
Yeah.
a cinematic. So that this cinematic can work for a comic or can work for a webtoon or it could work for concept art.
Yeah.
Like that is my approach to the same work that is going to be worked in different mediums.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a cinematic.
Is that as true in Lost on Planet Earth? Are you
No,
drawing these individually, or are you laying this out as a page?
No, I'm just laying the page because
You're the
it's
page,
it's a different medium that
Yeah.
we wanted to approach, like
Yeah.
exclusively comic.
Yeah, Lost on Planet Earth is not like was never a digital presentation like on Webtoon.
Mhm.
It's always been formatted like a traditional comic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we were to do another webtoon like Max and I, we would be we'd be planning it in a very cinematic way, or in a way that has a ton of movement in it. But yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure I understood what your answer was. I got you completely there. Let's see. What do we got? I want to ask you, Mags. Let's talk about maybe mainstream comics just for like 5 minutes here. And one of the reasons why I want to ask you, I want to talk to you about you were one of a few writers, 6 or 8 maybe, that were picked for the one of the DC writer workshops. It was like kind of an apprentice program, yeah, essentially. So how did that come about, and what was that experience like?
I don't know. There's not really much to tell.
Yeah.
It was Scott's a great teacher. I mean, I just applied and I got in.
Yeah.
You know, and we learned a lot about it. But I mean, I don't know, that was what, 4 years ago.
Sure.
You know,
I guess my question is was there an expectation of this is the way you break a DC comic story, or was Scott teaching kind of best practices for doing comics in general?
Neither.
Okay.
I would say that Scott, it was a lot of it was just kind of, here's what a DC comic is philosophically, in kind of a very big picture sort of way, in terms of this emphasis on, I don't want to say on spectacle, but there's kind of like a bigness to it.
On action. There has to be always action. There always has to be movement.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about action. I'm not just talking about action.
Okay.
I just mean there's just kind of a bigness to it. I guess there were a fantasticality that he really wanted us to lean into. I think fantasticality isn't quite the word either, because I wouldn't really say Batman is fantastical, but I think anybody
Batman's pretty
reads
fantastical.
Comics,
I mean, you know.
But when I mean, fine, I'm not going to argue the point. I'm not going to get into semantics. But,
no. I'm not trying to start a fight here. I'm just I'm super curious.
No.
Legitimately interesting.
And just kind of ways to navigate telling that kind of story. It wasn't best practices for comics in general, because if we were in the program, we already knew how to write comics in general.
Okay.
This is about writing a DC comic. In terms of how to spotlight the character, building the story around the character fundamentals and stuff like that.
Right. And it seems to me that it only kind of led to maybe half a dozen DC comics that you were writing at that time. Is that?
I didn't write half a dozen DC comics.
Well, no, but I mean in terms of like a DC superhero comics.
I didn't write half a dozen DC superhero comics.
Didn't you?
No. No. What ended up happening is very few people from the writers' workshop ended up getting regular work. I already had Eternity Girl at the time.
I see. Okay.
And
that's part of my confusion.
DC's just kind of been in this kind of like constant whirlwind.
Yeah.
And there's been so many organizational changes. The whole point of the workshop was that it was supposed to be the start of like this like treadmill for the talent refresh to like get the farm teams up and going so that you can bring them in. And there have just been so many friggin' organizational shifts, moving editors here and there, changing responsibilities, launching lines, canceling lines, launching books, canceling books. The whole treadmill just collapsed. I had this meeting with Jamie Rich. I want to say start of 2019, where we were talking about it, and he was saying how like, we're working on getting the treadmill back up and running, and it didn't get back up and running. And a year later, I was back out in LA, and another meeting, and they're like, all right, well, Dan's out now, and Dan, whatever, I don't remember. Yada yada yada, something about Dan not being there, and Jim Lee running to really get serious about talent refresh, and that didn't really seem to go anywhere because it's still primarily just the same people getting books, and that's not a complaint about DC because it's still just about the organizations. There's so much, like I've had so many of these conversations. There's just so much change constantly happening within DC that 90% of the time it's just, all right, I'll just call someone I already know. Call someone who I already know will be able to get the work in on time with a minimum of fuss. And so
and in a way I would say same as it ever was, right? Because this has always been the situation, is that editors work with the people that they know can actually hit the deadlines and do the thing that they need them to do,
and to be honest, like really it wasn't, Ginny Hex was the first like big 2 book, I mean absenting Eternity Girl, which is its own thing, that I like genuinely felt like comfortable doing, where I finally was like, you're like, I had to have like Bendis like have a sit down with me, just be like, we want you to be additive. We want you to like bring this character forward and not just like loop her around and return her to status quo, because that's not the point here. And I feel like I don't know, I've just always had this weird like trepidation, or every time I would have a big 2 book where I'd be like, I don't want to,
That's interesting, because it seems to me that kind of historically the only good big 2 books outside of the originals are the ones where people fuck with the characers.
I mean, that's my logic. But I kind of felt like I wasn't in any.
And even more so with Ginny Hex in particular, like Ginny Hex was kind of a cipher, right? Like that was kind of, Ginny Hex was not a character, in a way.
I know, but it also wasn't my character, and like Bendis. I know Bendis had a great deal of affection for Ginny in particular, and I was just like, okay, well, what do I? Am I allowed to do anything that matters in this book?
Yeah.
And I'm really proud that if I felt like I did get to do something really, really, additive and defining for the character. I wish DC was still interested in using her.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly, as you said, they're a company in a state of flux right now, and but then so is Marvel, for that matter.
I mean, they all are. I mean, we all are right now. Everything's
my side, same thing. We're all in a state of flux here too. It's
everything's different. We have no idea what is going to come down the pipe for the first time in our lives, where it's like, well, we don't have a reasonable picture of what 5 years from now is going to look like. We just have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
So everything's all fucky and up in the air, and we're all just doing our best.
Yeah, I guess I would argue this is the exact moment to do the wildest, biggest, craziest ideas, because I think, again, if you look at sort of the broad expanse of comics history, they get safe and stayed, and then someone comes along and sort of knocks over the apple cart, whether it's Alan Moore, whether it's Neil Gaiman, whether it's Garth Ennis, whether it's Brian K. Vaughan, and just says, hey, let's try it, something new,
I have something that we're getting ready to announce that I'm really excited about. It's like I'm not going to get too much into it, but yeah, I think that's us trying to do something really, really different. It's a book that just there was never going to be a place in the direct market for it. It's such an odd duck of a comic, and so hopefully that means something will come.
Yeah, very good. Well, we can touch that a little bit later. Let's go to what's next in the timeline? Morning in America, Vagrant Queen. What's the next?
I don't have any idea.
What?
I think it was.
I don't have any idea when anything comes out.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was Vagrant Queen first, and
Okay.
then Morning in America.
Okay. And so Vagrant Queen, and then it becomes a television show. Is this exciting to you as a creator?
It was very exciting. It was just a really, really surreal experience that happened incredibly quickly. I had Black Mask come to me and they're like, we have a script for a pilot, and Sci-Fi's already looking at it, and I'm like, okay, cool. This is sick. I really loved what Jem Gerard, who created and directed the show and wrote the pilot, what she was able to do. I felt like it really captured, I guess, to a degree, my authorial voice, which was a really odd experience, seeing things that it felt like I'd written that I didn't.
Let me just go back half. You said Black Mask. It was Vault that got
Vault.
Yeah, okay.
Vault.
Just triple checking that I didn't fall into some sort of alternate timeline.
I don't have a memory. I don't remember anything.
And again, this was one of Vault's first books, as I recall. It was in.
We were in the second batch of books.
Once again, you're in the second batch. Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
That tends to be how it goes.
Yeah.
We also ran.
No.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Second batch is like, we proved the concept. Now we're gonna unleash the big guns. That's what it should be.
But yeah, the we had the script. The show was greenlit 4 months after I read that script.
Wow.
The show was filming 3 months after that.
Wow.
And 2 months after it started filming, I was in South Africa visiting the set and sitting in a spaceship I made up.
So let me tie this back to that Eisner conversation. Did that go to your head? Did that make you think again? Oh wait, no, I really am.
No, that was actually a pretty humbling experience. I was not involved in the show, and I really wanted to be, and we couldn't make it happen.
Okay.
And so I just kind of had to just be like, okay, so I've just kind of got to take a step back. This show isn't about me.
Yeah.
This project isn't the comic that I made, and it's not the comic that I made. It's a different product. There's they added an additional character, which really changes the dynamic. They really charmed up Isaac, who is a deliberate shitheel in the comic, and they kind of just made him this this charming rake. It's great, and I love it. I think they all did a fantastic job. There's an episode that's just a parody of Clue. None of that came from me.
Right.
Right. And that was just, and I was dealing with this industry that I knew really nothing about, that I had no idea how to interact with, or I was nobody. Yeah. They flew me out to South Africa and gave me the tours and everything and expensed shit, and that was nice, but they were doing it, as compensation for, that was part of the compensation package.
Right.
It's not because I'm not saying that I'm not grateful, because it was a wonderful life-changing trip.
Sure.
But you know, it just kind of was like reminding me of just where I was in my career and in my life.
Okay.
It's like, this is really cool, but there's a lot of television.
Yeah.
You know, and
Boy, is there a lot of television. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of television.
Yeah.
It's nice because it means that I can, I've got that under my belt. I can trot that out when I'm trying to because right now, like, I'm really working on building like a film and TV portfolio. Not portfolio, like a
resume.
Mm-hmm. Nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives me some legitimacy that I wouldn't otherwise have.
Sure.
It means that when my manager, goes to people, they can be like, "Oh, one of our books got made into the show. That's cool, right? Take a look at this, huh?" Right?
Yeah. So my last question on this, and really, if this comes off as like wrong, I'm not trying to do that. But is it okay when you're trying to build that resume that the show wasn't renewed, or does that work again? You don't know. Okay. Yeah. No. I assume that was the answer.
I don't think that it hurts. I really don't. There's so much fucking TV.
Yeah.
People are just throwing shit against the wall.
Yeah.
And seeing what sticks. And I think Vagrant Queen would have had a chance if they had it change its time slot immediately.
Yeah.
I will never for the life of me understand why any network would invest millions of dollars at a television show and then just not give a shit if anyone watches it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's bring you guys back together here. Morning in America. That's the next thing you guys did together. That's right?
Yes.
Yeah. So how did that come along?
I don't even remember.
Claudia?
You were like, let's do another comic together. You and I.
Going to do about the teddy girl, the teddy girl thing,
yes.
And then they ended up going in a wildly different direction.
It was completely different. Yes.
I love that.
We wanted to do
something about a girl gang.
Yeah. It just, what happened?
I have no clue.
Something happened along the way, and suddenly there were like end of the world scenarios in there. It was something.
It was fun. I always like to see how weird things will get.
Things got really weird.
So I part of my curiosity here, because I literally don't know, is Claudia, you were just the colorist on Kim and Kim, and then you're the artist on Morning in America. So
colorist, yes.
Yes, and the colorist, true. But how did you become the artist on the book rather than merely the colorist? And when I say
I'm an artist,
colorist, that's not insulting, because coloring is a
no,
really
I love
hard...
colorists.
Okay.
I'm an artist first and foremost. So I was coloring. I was work because she wanted me to get money too. So I was like, well, this is easy, so I'm gonna do it. And I helped Eva do her things, and then then I did Kim and Kim, and then I got more jobs as a colorist than I did as an artist. So I don't know. I just went in and ended up getting stuff I didn't expect. And I'm an artist, so I always expect that people are going to ask me to draw stuff. But Max finally got me to do my debut, if you want to call it like that, in that particular comic. Well, I'm still very proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, you did fantastic work. Yeah. I think that if I remember correctly, whatever. It's you and I had already gotten like really close.
Yes.
And I loved working with you, and I saw your line art all the time because you always sent me stuff. Yes. And I was like, why shouldn't we do a comic together? We're like fucking bitch, like we should absolutely do a book. And we did one, and it was me and Claudia have always been like really close. There was with Ava, there's always more of a language barrier.
Yes.
Her English was it's improved dramatically, but it was much worse. So I would mostly conduct business with the two of them through Claudia, and we just got to be really good friends.
Yes.
Very nice.
And
Yeah.
that's why I started as a colorist, because Eva needed me specifically because she wanted to contact people and talk to people, but she had a rough time because she was learning English.
Yeah.
So that's why I was colorist, and she was like doing the line art.
She's gotten so much better. I'm so proud of
Yes.
her. Because it's
Yes,
a
me
weird,
too.
hard language.
It's very hard.
Yep, I would agree with that. And it's nice, I have to imagine, to be able to build that relationship between creative people where you grow to know what the other person expects and what you're able to do. Is that, do I have the gist of it right?
Yes, basically, like, we're friends, so we trust each other to understand what we need in whatever project we're working on.
Yeah, and we're always really open to whatever the other one wants to do.
Mhm.
Like, I always try to be very Spartan in my scripts, so that just I'm giving the artist what they need to solve the panel and ultimately to solve the page. And with Ava, I can give her even less than that. I can, I can really step back, and I can get very conversational and talk about tone, and in these very like abstract and idiosyncratic ways that I know that she and I are going to speak the same language about. And so I think that it's always particularly easy communicating with Ava. With Claudia on the art.
It's
That's
okay,
great.
we're besties.
Tired. It's 10 p.m. here.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm sorry. It's only 7 here.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So where did Lost in Planet Earth come from?
I'm just a big Trekkie.
Yeah.
I'm just a big Trekkie, and I wanted to do something that was an homage to Star Trek, but also was aware of it and critical of it. I wanted to do something that kind of spoke to the moment that we've been in for the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just go on a little jag about Star Trek.
Please do.
Okay, first off, I love Star Trek so much. It's my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah,
it's
ditto.
Possibly the closest thing I have to a religion, and I'm only mostly joking.
Yes.
But it's got some weird problems, and in a lot of ways, can be a weirdly reactionary show. We find out the last episode of the original series that women are not allowed to be starship captains, which we've all just decided to pretend never happened.
Yeah.
There's uniformed members of Starfleet sitting on the Federation Council. Starfleet has a coup. There's multiple coup attempts, and and it's just everything is superhuman dominated, and that's something that Star Trek as a show is kind of aware of, and we'll use a little bit. Like, you see that in Star Trek VI: Undiscovered Country, when the Klingons are talking about how an alliance with the Federation would mean the eradication of their culture because the Federation just assimilates everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And in Deep Space Nine, you have Quark and Garrick, two outsider characters, observe how insidious the Federation is. That at least the Borg tell you what they're going to do before they do it. But the Federation shows up with root beer, and they're just so nice. And the next thing you know, you're abandoning the things that make you a Cardassian, or the things that make you a Ferengi.
Right.
It's just the way Clark puts it. He's like, humans are like root beer. It's so cloying and sweet. It's insidious. But if you drink it enough, you start to like it. You see that in the first season of Discovery, where the big theme is remain Klingon, that the threat is the words "we come in peace," that the Federation is ultimately lying, and what they want is to take from us what makes us Klingon. And that's a thread that I don't think has ever gotten enough attention, even when it's been brought up really explicitly. So I wanted to do a book that was kind of about that. And it's just kind of the first few drafts, and I mentioned this in the foreword, but the first few drafts, like they were so boring. Like she was just marching from set piece to set piece while people explained to her, all the ways the fake federation she lives in sucks.
Right.
And there wasn't a heart to it. She just seemed really weird and panicky, and she had no agency. She was making no decisions. And so what I ended up doing was landing on not having agency and making no decisions as the theme of the book. As someone who had been marched from place to place her whole life, and had ideology fed to her, and as soon as she gets out, she's immediately going down the same path, just with different people. People who ultimately are just using her for their own ends.
Right.
Who just expect her to get on this path for them. We hear a lot about how weirdly coercive this faux federation, the Star Union is. That I borrowed some elements from Starship Troopers, service guarantee citizenship. And the idea is that everybody does their time, puts in their years of service in either in, the exploratory, the interplanetary fleet, in the science services, in the colonization corps, and everybody puts in their time, and the reward for that is you don't have to live in the economy anymore. Like, that's when you get access to, the post-scarcity society. But people who don't put in their service are ultimately the idea is abandoning their responsibilities to their political community, and therefore they don't get the benefits of the political community. They would, don't get the franchise, and don't get access to this, the post-scarcity society. And what makes Star Trek's economy doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, why is anybody a waiter? Like, who are these janitors in this post-scarcity society? Well, it's those people, the people who, this permanent underclass of people who decided not to participate for whatever reason. I wanted to do something that, was just going to be critical of, I guess, the holes in the vision of Star Trek that we see. It's an incredibly militarized show because that's the perspective we see. It feels like all anybody wants to do is put on a uniform and march off into Starfleet and take orders. That's all anybody wants to fucking do.
Sure. Sure, but Roddenberry was of the age that he served in World War II, as I recall, right? And so
he served in
Korea. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But either way, it was of that generation, right, where they thought that was what service was military service.
The thing is, I'm thinking of a lot of
evil, right?
I'm thinking of a lot of stuff that's like happened in the post Roddenberry, just post Roddenberry years. You have in the Next Generation. Actually, I mean, I guess that is still Roddenberry. Early on. Wesley Crusher is supposed to be like the Mozart of math and physics, but he's like, I'm a pilot.
Yeah.
Take orders.
Yeah. Well, no, but again, I mean, I feel like that's an obligation of television rather than of the universe, right?
Well, no,
like they wanted to have
a
kid on the show, and how do you put the kid on the show?
But what I'm talking about is the universe. What I'm talking about is the world it presents. I get that there's practical reasons for all of this. Sure. Half the reason the show is as militaristic as it is just because it's set on a military ship, and it's built its world around the existence of Starfleet starships.
Yeah, but it's also the just sort of the quintessential assumptions of 1962 America.
Yeah.
Or 65 America or whatever it is, right? Like they still believed in the military industrial complex as something that was actually worth preserving or presenting, right? And I don't know. I feel like Star Trek over the years has generally moved away from that. I mean, certainly Picard's ship was no longer a military ship. It was, of course, a military ship, but that was not its primary goal, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I don't see how you can say it's not a military ship when you've got captains, lieutenants, and security and brigs.
Right,
and
but he's a diplomat and an explorer, whereas Kirk was not. Kirk was not a diplomat and explorer. I mean, he would be a diplomat if he needed to.
But he's a diplomat and explorer serving in an extremely militarized role atop a massively powerful battleship.
Yeah.
Like, no, they're diplomats, but you're sending in the fucking USS Abraham Lincoln and saying, like, we want to talk.
Right.
And so, you know, it's a book that just tries to deal with the weird world of conformism that Star Trek kind of built itself around.
Yeah.
And so I wanted it to be in the same way that, like, Wesley Crusher reached the point where he realized that Starfleet was not for him, that was not his path, that he just was going the way that he thought he was expected to go. I wanted to have someone look at all of this and realize there was something broken in it, and they couldn't participate.
Yeah.
And for Basil, you know, she just kind of had this massive realization one day that she had never made any decisions in her life about what she actually wanted. She was just on her path, and she would make whatever compromises were needed to stay on that path. And she was a gay teenager, and she was in love with her best friend, and her best friend was in love with her, and they decided that they were just, well, if this ever gets out, we're all fucked, because progress is not linear. In this world, the statue of Robert E. Lee in Richmond, Virginia, is still standing, and I put that in very deliberately. I wanted to show, like, that this world has very specific kinds of values regarding everybody's role, and it's an extremely patriarchal world. You see the number one captain in Starfleet, in, you know, the Interplanetary Fleet, is this Captain Kirk guy who's just a lecherous predator, you know, who takes advantage of his crew. And you see this, that happens to Charlotte in multiple different ways, in which, you know, her womanhood is leveraged against her, her homosexuality is leveraged against her. And it just sort of becomes about the how do you step away from those assumptions? How do you find who you are?
How many drafts did it take you to actually find what the story was?
I wrote 2 issues, and I wrote issue 1 and 2, and then I wrote issue 1 and 2, and then I wrote issue 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay. Okay.
So they were not good.
Three times through. Okay.
No, well, I did the first 2 or 3 times through.
Yeah. And were you at Comixology at this point? Did you have an editor? Were you still just building this? Okay.
Yeah. We're edited by Joe. Edited us, right?
Yes, it was Joe.
So we didn't work with a Comixology editor. We worked with my good friend Joe Corallo, who you might also know from having organized some absolutely wonderful anthologies for A Wave Blue World, and She Said Destroy It Vault. He's a really just incredibly collaborative writing partner, who, you know, just like worked with me on each draft to just kind of like zero in on what was actually happening. But yeah, just took a lot of work. It was a difficult write.
So let me ask this question. If I heard you right there, you had already placed the book at Comixology.
Yeah, we sold the book.
So given that you were struggling with the shape of it, the thrust of it, I don't know the right way to put that. How do you pitch an idea? And I mean this in a positive way, right? I'm trying to get good things out of this, not like you're a bad person. How do you pitch an idea that you haven't actually figured out yet?
Well, because I thought I had figured it out.
Okay.
I pitched one kind of book, and then I tried to write it, and it wasn't clicking.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't satisfying. I had this very clear image of the kind of book I wanted it to be, and I wrote that book, and it's fucking sucked.
Yeah.
So I had to step back and look at, well, what was broken about it. And what I realized was that I had a 1, 2, 3 of the plot, but I didn't have characters. I didn't have personalities who were making decisions that mattered and affected them. And that happens a lot in my first drafts. Is I'm so focused on hitting the plot that I'm trying to tell that I'll kind of lose sight of my characters, and so I'm a huge fan of page 1 rewrites. I think they're an incredibly valuable experience. I suggest them as a matter of course. But I just needed to get in and really inhabit Basil's position and Basil's mind. And there was this one little throwaway line in the first, I think it was on the second page, of just this, while she's doing like her super rush morning meditations, she's listening to this, one philosopher called Kalakuitu. And that just like that interaction, or that snippet of that philosopher's thought just really hung in my mind, and I kept going back to it because what I saw in it was I sort of saw in it this key to how I was going to unlock all this, and that was in the combination of asceticism and self-actualization. So I spent a lot of time neck deep in Catholicism. Prior to my transition, I studied to be a Catholic priest. I did graduate school in theology, and I looked into joining the conventual Franciscans at one point. And I studied the work of Thomas Merton in depth when I was in college. I took a whole class on Thomas Merton. And Thomas Merton was this Trappist monk in the 20th century, who grew increasingly how do I put it? I guess idiosyncratic in his practice and in his version of asceticism, and how he wanted to live his vows in his understanding of what the divine was. He started gleaning a lot of influences from Buddhism. He was a friend of this prominent Buddhist Rinpoche in the 60s before he died getting electrocuted stepping out of a bathtub in Thailand.
Wow.
But yeah, so Kalakuitu was kind of this ersatz Thomas Merton who was offering to her this fundamentally different vision of the world she was living in, where instead of receiving her value externally, she was finding it intrinsically in her own self and in the simple activities of ascetic life.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of became this process of, well, how does she end up in that sort of place? And I knew by the time I started the third draft of the first issue, I knew that's where she needed to end up, that there had to be this process of descent and withdrawal, of her losing everything and then being at peace with that loss. None of that was in the pitch, but I frequently find that books don't reveal what they're about until you're writing them.
Yeah, and Comixology was I don't want to say fine with the change, because why would they not be? But
trusts me. Chip is a fan of my work. And so Chip, I run this stuff by Chip. Like every time I would do. Basically, by the time we were ready to show him something, I was very, very upfront. Like, this isn't exactly what we discussed.
Yeah.
And he's like, "That's fine.
Yeah.
I think this is all great. I wanted your comic, whatever your comic is."
Yeah. Am I basically correct that Comixology is Chip, essentially?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
You're not too far off the mark.
Editorially, I mean.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
But you're not too far off the mark.
Okay.
I don't really know their internal structure very much.
Mm-hmm.
Chip is the one that I deal with, but I do know there are other people involved.
So at what point, Claudia, did you get involved in this? How did you read the earlier drafts? Did you come in at the end? Tell me where you're at with this.
She named Basil.
Yes,
Oh,
I was there from the beginning. Yeah, Max just told me, "Hey, I want to do another comic with you," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm game. Let's do this."
Yeah. And do you share her love of Star Trek?
I actually never watched Star Trek. Sadly, we don't get
so
reruns here.
I love it.
I'm so glad that you didn't watch it, because it meant that she didn't come to Star Trek with a lot of visual preconceptions. I had to point her in some directions to get things to more closely align with it. She brought her own sensibility to it and really, really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we never we didn't have cable back then when I was a kid and a teen, so we never had any kind of reruns of any cool shows at all.
Yeah.
So never had any Star Trek.
And have you still to this day never seen Star Trek?
Not at all. Just a few episodes of the new ones, but that's about it.
Claudia, go watch Star Trek 4.
I should.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
Fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I will
San
watch
Francisco
that
too,
one.
by the way.
What?
Sort of. I said it's set in San Francisco.
Though, I mean, it's not sort of set in San Francisco.
Only kind of, because a lot of it's filmed in other places, and
it's set in San Francisco.
Yeah. It's cinematic San Francisco, so it's not actually San Francisco.
It's mostly Los Angeles.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So were you giving feedback in these early drafts at all, or were you just like, whatever you want to do, just tell me when to start drawing?
Yeah, basically, I was just waiting to read the drafts, and I read them and I liked them, but Max was like, "No, this is garbage. Don't touch it." And I was like, "What? Okay, I don't touch it." You said that, and you were like, "No, that is not going to work. So I'm going to do it again." And I was like, "Oh, I like that one. I like the I think it was the first draft for the second one."
Basil was so just like the jumpy and tense.
Yes, and I got that. She was still kind of jumpy after all, but you toned it down. You refined her a lot.
Well, I took all that nerve, I took all that energy and gave her some direction with it instead of just having to be dragged along into this world where she still increasingly has no idea what is and isn't true, because this is still just people telling her things.
Exactly, and that's what she refined. I read the first two and I didn't really see the problem with it, but then she showed me the whole story at once, and I was like, no, these make sense. This is exactly what it should be.
Yeah, I
understood after I read three comics in one. This is it.
Yeah. Let me I want to ask you about the actual craft of making comics. I'd love to back up sort of half a step, 2 steps, whatever it is. So you either turn on your computer or you're turning on your I assume you're working digitally, Claudia. I thought so, yeah. So you power up your iPad or you power up your laptop, and you've got that blank piece of white blankness that's sitting in front of you, and it's blank and it has nothing on it. How do you start? What do you do? What's the thing? How do you start page 1, panel 1?
What, me?
Both of you.
Okay. Well, I first I always talk to Max or or the writer of the current thing I'm doing. So we talk. We get this visual library. We get the idea of what the expectations are laid on the table, and once we have like these preliminaries done, I get the script and I read it, and I get this movie in my head, and I try to make it like as close as the vision we discussed as possible.
Yeah. Are you thumbnailing it out first, I assume, before you start drawing anything?
I try to, but most of the time I'm short on time, so I do the sketch like as I go.
Yeah, I trust her. I trust her implicitly, so I don't worry about seeing layouts from her. I work in a very iterative sort of way in that I've refined and simplified it a lot over the years. But at this point, basically, it's I just kind of start with, okay, I've got like this big top line idea, and sometimes it's just a title. And sometimes it's just some really, really vague shit. Trying to think of an example of something that got made. Whatever. And then I'll just sit down and I'll take whatever it is I have, and then I'll do what I call story discovery. And that's in just a bulleted list. I just start jotting down, okay, well, what is it I think is interesting about this idea? What is grabbing me? What about that is grabbing me? What about that is interesting? Okay, well, what are the possibilities there? How does that interact with everything else that I'm thinking about this right now? And then I go, oh, okay, cool. So I have some kind of idea of kind of what this is about. All right, so let's start concretizing that. And so, okay, so once upon a time, I use the I don't know if it's called the Pixar Method or whatever, but it's this fucking great little writing exercise where you go, once upon a time there was blank, every day blank, until one day blank, because of that blank, because of that blank, because of that blank, until finally blank.
Yeah, and Mags, let me just quickly jump in. Are you doing this in a document? Are you doing this in a notebook?
Yeah, no, I just type. I can't. I have god awful handwriting. I can't read it. It's gotten worse over the years.
It does. I can attest to this. Mine is also horrible. Like I just lost the ability to write.
Yeah. Oh well. I'm sure I could get it back if I needed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just kind of do this unordered list and just sort of figure out, what's the big picture? What are the themes that I'm interested in? And then I start thinking, well, how do I bring those themes to life? Then I'll get this, like, by this point, I'll be able to write, okay, I think I've got a couple of paragraphs that I can write confidently. And so I'll write a couple of paragraphs as kind of, well, here's what I know about this story right now, and try to give it some shape. Then I'll, I used to go from there to do a much longer write-up, but now usually I just go to just doing rough issue by issue breakdowns.
Okay.
Just being like, well, in this issue, I think this is going to happen. I know I've got 5 issues to do this, so I start thinking, what are my big beats?
Yeah.
And then when I get down to doing an issue, I take one of those and I just do page by page breakdown, so I know it's happening on every single goddamn page before I even write it.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of just formatting.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And so when you're doing your kind of issue by issue breakdown, are you conceptually in your head going, all right, there's 3 scenes, this one's 6 pages, this one's 4 pages?
No.
Okay.
What I do is I just say, well, here's what I think I can accomplish in the space of 22 pages. And here's roughly how I think I could go about it. But I mean, sometimes though it's just A plot, meanwhile B plot, and then any really particular story beats. I try to think in terms of act structure, so that I make sure that I've got just that you're just following the basic, rise and fall of a dramatic arc.
Sure. Are you thinking of act structure in terms of this is a 5-issue story, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or are you thinking of it issue 1? I need to have three beats in this thing to make it a complete experience for those 22 pages.
Yes, on both counts.
On both. Okay. Very
yes,
good.
on both
okay.
counts. I also would take that further and say that I try to give every page an arc as much as I can. Because the page is sort of the fundamental narrative unit in a way that you can't say in prose writing or anything like that. So I try to give every page structure, every group of pages structure, and every group of groups structure.
And are you considering sort of 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 because that's where the page turns are, or are you're just working on each page on its own plan?
No, I absolutely do my page turns.
Okay.
That's just best practices.
Yeah. No, I'm just asking,
Yeah,
not
and I'm
everybody's
just
the same,
answering. I'm just saying, I know there are people who don't, and my take on it is that's just best practices. I try to work. I think there's a lot of rules in comics that you can break. I think that's not one of them. You have to have a really, 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 really good excuse to not have a page turn on your odd pages.
Yeah.
I can't even conceive of trying to write a book like that.
Yeah.
It just feels like there's a really natural rhythm to reading comics that I think you just kind of need to account for.
Yeah, I agree. Claudia, when you're laying out your pages, are you also conscious of odds and evens in terms of what action needs to be at the last panel? Or
No, because Max already did for me. I actually trust my writers on that. What I do,
I work in full script, so
yeah, so she does that for me. So I don't have to worry about anything. What I do is instead I focus on different, the way I set my panels should make sense with what she's trying to say.
Sure.
Like, if she wants to have a page turner in certain page, she just does the script in a way that I can use it to focus on that, whatever's going on whatever's going to happen on the next page. Like, I make it exciting.
Yeah. Have you ever come to a circumstance where you need to vary from the script? That actually here's where the key thing on this page is, as opposed to what was written on the page.
Yeah, all the time. I want to, give a little bit of my ideas, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, and that's it.
I always try to be super conscious of the fact that this is a collaborative work. This is not my book. This is our book.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the reasons why I really like to involve Claudia especially when I'm working with Claudia right from the start, because it means that we can sort of build the superstructure together, and then, I mean, she knows this because we've worked together so much. But my rule of thumb is, if you've got a better way to get this page where it needs to get, let's talk. Because I have no objection to doing this in a better way, especially if it's in a more visually engaging way.
Yes.
And my favorite example of that is actually from Quantum Teens Ergo. I had this 2-page sequence where they show up at this big crazy space technology fair in a garage, and Eric wanted to do this big 2-page top half spread, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to cut 2 entire pages to do this, and it did it. I did it. I cut 2 great pages because that was better.
Yeah. Are your scripts different from Claudia than they are for other people because you've worked with her for so long?
Yeah, I don't have to go into as much detail. I don't have to give her permission to, like, there are times where I'm writing a page and I'm like, all right, this is my best attempt to do this, but I don't know if this makes any sense visually. And I'll frequently write a note to my artists. I'll usually just talk about that stuff with Claudia and like person to person without necessarily putting it in the script. And she knows that she has just immense latitude. I feel like if I can ask her to make changes to the art, she can ask me to make changes to the script, because this is our baby. Just to give you an example, in Lost on Planet Earth, Ashley was supposed to die at the end of the first issue, and she was just so adorable, and like she was so energetic and sweet, and I was like, oh my god, okay, we gotta keep her, don't we? And she was like, yes, we gotta keep her.
Yeah, man, that's great. No, that's fantastic. What else did I want to ask about process? When you're actually working and actually getting work done, Claudia, what's your output like? Are you getting like a page every 2 days, a page a day? How do you flow?
Oh wow, it depends on how much time I got. Well,
a perfectly honest answer. I actually kind of love that one.
Well, it is what it is. Like I'm not here because I'm slow. I gotta churn like 5 pages a day.
Right.
This on my best days, I did like 10 pages a day because I was insane, and I'm never doing that anymore because that's insane. That's not okay. Never do that.
Yeah.
I once wrote an entire issue in 3.5 hours, and it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life.
Never do that. No, I worked at that pace because I had very little time, and comics are unforgivable that way. My most recent projects have been like way more lenient on time, and I don't accept any projects where I'm expected to destroy my health just to get it done.
No, absolutely not. No, you should never harm your health in any way, shape, or form to make comics.
Yeah,
as much as I love comics, that's not a thing to do. Cool. Well, I guess the next thing I would ask is, we're getting to the end. I know you're really tired, Mags. I can see you yawning there.
I'm so tired. I've been up since
I know.
7
I'm sorry.
a.m.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was that. You were not that. It's time to go. So are you guys going to work on something? You got something else coming up? You must. I'm
always looking for ideas to bring to her. I have had to moderate my workload as I have I got married, and I'm trying to. Thank you. I've been trying to be less like lost in my writing.
On planet Earth.
I'm also trying to really slow down because I'm working on a couple of things right now that are very big and very difficult. They're not like they're big like it's not Superman, but they're big like to me, and they're very difficult emotionally for me, and they're extremely complicated structurally. I'm exploring a lot with surrealism in my writing. I'm working on this big graphic novel right now. It's called Surrender. That is just very much about my history with religious trauma and trying to exorcise a bunch of demons. And it's an extremely draining book to write. And I when I'm working at full clip, like I said, I can produce like 45 scripts a year. That's on average a script a week. I have done more. I wrote last year. I knocked out a 200-page graphic novel in 9 weeks. But just the stuff that I'm dealing with now has been emotionally difficult to the point that it's been very much of like affecting me, and so I have to slow down on it so that I'm not setting myself into PTSD attacks.
Yeah, yeah. Has lockdown made your creative life easier or harder?
Both.
Yeah,
Um,
Harder.
I mean,
harder.
like I said, like I spent the first year of the pandemic, like just knocking shit out.
Yeah,
This year, I've been having to acknowledge the realities of the toll
yeah,
that it's taken on me.
yeah.
And especially the toll that it's taken on my wife, who has had asthma. I mean, she has asthma. So she's always been high risk. She has a lot of anxiety that we've had to work through this year. But it's also, I've been finding like other creative outlets. I've started doing music, which is really cool. And it's nice because it's so much less like emotional pressure
Sure,
because it's not my career.
sure.
I can just, get stuff like that done.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been this weird year. And
Yeah.
it's taken a big hit on my level to just freaking kick out pages.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I don't think it's necessarily going to get any easier. Like we'll learn how to deal with it ourselves more,
Well, I
right?
mean,
From
I'm
because
pretty.
we're like building the muscles, right? Like, we're learning how to deal with some of this emotional stuff that
Well, I've just stopped
you don't
pitching single
confront
issue stuff.
things in your life when
Yes.
you don't have to, right? Like and so hopefully we're all going to come out of this stronger, but I think it's going to get crazier and weirder in the next 2 years because everything's changing because of
Cool.
all
Thanks
this
for saying
external
that.
stuff.
Sounds awesome.
I know. I mean,
I
particularly when I look at the comics industry in particular, right? Like the
well,
comics industry is about
I
to
made
go
a decision.
through.
I made a decision at the beginning of 2020, before any of this shit happened, that I wanted to refocus on the book market, which is good because then that's given me the ability to slow down and to take more stock of how I'm writing and what I'm writing and the effect that it's having on me. It also means that stuff has a much longer lead time, which is incredibly stressful, which has further hurt my ability to produce. The pandemic slowed down production on so many books that I've got. Like I've got like 3 graphic novels that big graphic novels that I've sold, and the pandemic just made, for that first year, everything ground to a halt more or less entirely.
Yeah.
And that's been, that's taken its emotional toll.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I feel you. I honestly, I feel you. Claudia, do you have anything to add to that kind of part of the thread?
Not really. I struggle a ton because, gotta keep the family alive.
Yeah.
It's just that I've only been on survival mode. I'm trying to get out of it. Like slowly, I'm trying to.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
I've been in survival mode all this time, so it's been extremely rough for me. But thankfully, I had the money and the means to keep my family alive, especially. So we're doing our best.
Yeah. Well, if you keep making art, and I think that's good, and that's good for society, and it's a thing that I applaud and support, and it's what I'm trying to reward here in whatever ridiculous way that I am by doing an interview. Do you have anything you guys want to plug? Anything immediately coming up that you can talk about, that you want to say, hey, you like this, also you'll like this?
Just keep your eyes out. We're going to be announcing this team I've been working with is going to be announcing a very weird new project within the next week.
Nice. Love weird new projects.
Yes. And I'm under NDA, so I can't say anything.
Okay. Yeah. I always want to give people the opportunity to plug away if they want to.
I wish I had something to plug in, but I don't.
Yeah. Well, I love your art very much, and I can't wait to see what you've got coming up next. I love your writing tremendously. I can't wait to see what you have coming next. This is a great book. But the last question, it's always, there's 200 something hours or programs of us talking to creators. It's viewed by a lot of people who want to make comics. So my last question always is, somebody who comes to you and they go, I want to make comics. I don't know what to do. How do I make comics? What's your piece of advice? It can be something physical. It can be something emotional. It can be something philosophical, from your heart, from your hand. I don't know. Tell me what you think. What pops in your mind?
Well,
I'm going in a couple of different directions. I guess it's not that big a fucking deal. Like perfect. Pardon. Good is way better than perfect. If good means finished. Don't get precious about your work. You're not going to change comics. If you change comics, cool. But you're probably not going to. That's okay. Just do what you got to do to get the work out, because comics will never be your job until you start acting like it already is your job.
Very good. I like that. That's wow. That's kind of literally perfect. I like that so much. Claudia, what do you have?
Well, it's kind of also that, like, this is a job, and you have to learn how to separate that. Not everything you're gonna do is going to be a piece of art, or you're not going to reinvent the wheel. What I'm trying to say is you have to use the tools you have at your disposal, and although you might not be able to, buy Photoshop or something like that, you can do your illustrations on different medium, experiment. There's Webtoon.
You can pirate Photoshop.
That is yes, you can.
I am very pro piracy.
Yes, and Photoshop is terrible and predatory, so you're allowed.
That's what I'm saying.
You're allowed to. But my point is that you use whatever tools you want, and there's a ton of places where you can get really good feedback, and you can publish your comics for free, and you might even get published. You never know. Like, just go for it. It's going to be your job when you treat it like a job, as Max said.
Yeah, I love it. Those are fantastic answers. I want to really thank both of you for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a lovely 2 hours. I've had a blast. I want to thank you for the book, and I want to say that anybody who's out there who's looking for something that's smart and thoughtful to read, that's a great piece of science fiction, but it's also very much a story of humanity and who we are and what we are. This is a great book, and this is a thing that you want to read. So Claudia, Magdalene, I thank you so much for making. I from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the fact that you make comics.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. The club business. Let's do a little club business. Sunday, I am back with the delayed show because his internet didn't work last time. We've got Dave McKean coming in, and we're going to talk to Dave McKean. We're going to have this same kind of conversation with Dave. Oh, Dave McKean, he's so good. This is going to be a great conversation because he's one of the big thinkers about comics. I'm really, really, really looking forward to that one. And then next month's graphic novel of the month club for the adult club, this was the adult club, will be The Good Asian. I don't have the book yet because it's been delayed until next week. It was supposed to already be in my hand, but so here's the most recent issue of The Good Asian. Yeah, we've got Pornsak. Actually, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Pishetshote, I think, but I'm going to have to ask him. And then Alexander Tefengi is going to be on video. So Pornsak's actually going to be here in person. He'll be the first person we've had in person in 18 months. And then Delta happened, and I'm like, we're not booking any more people in person. But so that'll be cool. We're going to have an actual and we're going to have a studio audience again for one episode. It'll be great. Next month's classic graphic novel of the month is going to be Heavy Liquid, and so we're going to be talking to Paul Pope. And the kids' book is Witch for Hire, and we're going to be talking to Ted Nafee. So that is a pretty good month of comics, I think. Yeah, but the book this month, Lost on Planet Earth, fantastic book. You must read it. I want to thank Jordan for running the show. I want to thank my staff, Kat and Zoe, for being my staff and keeping the store running. I want to thank Claudia and Magdalene for being here and being our guests tonight. Thank you so much. Appreciate everything
Thank
you do.
you.
And everybody, read more comics.
Yay.
Yes, please.
It's a dying industry.
It's not a dying industry. No. It's a thriving industry if we let it be.
Sure. Okay. Whatever you say.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Good night. I'm going to go to sleep.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you for
Bye.
watching this episode of the Graphic Novel of the Month Club. If you enjoyed what you were watching, please subscribe and hit that bell up in the top corner. If you enjoyed the books that we're talking about and the creators that we're talking to, every month we pick a brand new book. The staff votes on it. It's a program that helps keep our store alive, and we'd love to have you as a member. You'll get a new book every month. Just follow that URL at the bottom of the screen.